This podcast is brought to you by the Disabled But Not Really Foundation, a local Kansas City nonprofit organization that pushes to instill a physical limitless mindset that breeds courage, confidence, and competence within the disabled community. You can follow and support Disabled But Not Really on social media or go visit their website at disabledbutnotreally.org. Their work and their mission is to really impact communities and make more people understand the benefits of inclusivity.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm excited about the transition of my home, of just like removing clutter to allow more growth.
So that's a great segue to us starting.
Yes.
Morning, world. We are on Wesley Hamilton, April Jackson's me, and we have our guest, Richard Butler. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hello.
How are you, my friend?
Great. Thank you for having me on this morning. I've been on a lot of webinars lately, but this is the one I've been waiting for.
Hey.
Yeah, because you were we're gonna have you introduce yourself. I'm turning my ringer off, guys, but you were just on you did the US rowing.
Mm-hmm.
Richard does a little bit of everything, you guys. So we're going to talk about that. For those who are looking for more support, we have Amy doing some interpretation for you, ASL. And we're excited. Wes and I this is our 12th month.
Hey. Come on now. I love it.
Wow. I wouldn't have lasted this long if Wes wasn't like, yeah, we're doing it. Keep on. Okay, let's go. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling. And our announcement is we are going to continue to keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. The conversations have just been powerful and so real. We don't get a lot of that. So just shout out to everyone that has made it happen and is allowing us to continue this. It's
right. Yeah.
Love
Our
it.
intention is to keep it up. We came in during a dark period of the soul of America, one of a few. And our intention is to support ourselves. And in doing so, recognizing that the community of those who are BIPOC need support. And our goal, and I think, Wes and I are one in this, is there's a lot of talk, but not a lot of action. And our intention was also to bring action to our own selves to help heal ourselves, because we recognize that the onus is on ourselves to feel our best and to take care of ourselves in order to move forward through all that's going on. And so we're going to spend today just reflecting on that and the powerful conversations we've had. And we thought it was so appropriate to bring Richard Butler on because I'll tell a little backstory. So Richard has on a Lululemon hat, as you guys can see. And he was a local ambassador for Lululemon quite a few years ago. I've known Richard since 2012. He was like
5 years now.
5 years. And he literally, we're talking about Pittsburgh, was one of the first Black people I met in Pittsburgh. Like literally. And he became a Lulu ambassador locally. He's now moved through that, and he will share what he's doing with them. But one of the store managers reached out to me about applying for a grant here to be grant. But you needed to be a nonprofit or connected with a nonprofit. So Richard, what am I going to do? He and I work together. We support each other. Like we're in this life together, especially when we talk about a lot of things professionally and even some things personally. And he's like, hey, you're in alignment with a nonprofit that I sit on the board of, Open Up Pittsburgh. So he made the connection, and Marissa supported in writing the grant. And that's why we're even here, you guys. We wanted to bring him on because he's on the board. He's the one who actually was an integral part of making all of this happen.
Wow, that's amazing, Richard. Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really have been reflecting because that's sort of our topic. And I realized that my role in life is that I want to make a difference in everyone's life that I cross paths with, as well as connect them in a meaningful way. And that's what I do.
So can you expand more on what you do? Introduce the world to you, Richard.
Sure. First of all, I didn't realize I was your first guest. And in rolling out the year as your 12th guest, coming on a second time. So that's pretty cool. I am a lifelong Pittsburgher, born in a little community, all Black community, red line community called Homewood here in Pittsburgh. Ironically, Homewood is exactly the same as when I was born in that neighborhood. And that tells us a lot about where we are in society. We're nowhere, basically, right? You're talking about going into action, April, and that's right. There's a lot of talk, not a lot of action. I like to call myself a multifunctional professional. I presently am the HR manager for talent and wellness for the city of Pittsburgh. So I manage the professional development and the growth, personal and professional growth of our employees, as well as manage our entire wellness platform with the most amazing team, not just in Pittsburgh, but in America, because, we don't do these things by ourselves. And we always have to give that credit where that credit is due. I've been a fitness professional for 36 years. And I just recently retired from fitness in March after 36 years. And what's amazing about that, and Wes was alluding to it earlier about when you declutter, you create space. And so when I retired from fitness, all of a sudden I had this room to be creative and had this free time for growth and manifest so many wonderful things since 2020, 2021. It's unbelievable because those things are, happening for me, not to me. And I really needed to give up space somewhere for that to happen. And I'm grateful for that. I did this exercise during the pandemic, and the exercise is what am I good at and what do I love? And I've been good at fitness for 36 years, but it was no longer my lover. And so I eliminated it. And I did that, and I won't go through the whole list of what I went through, but being able to go through that exercise and really start pushing things that you love and creating the things that you love versus just doing the things that you're good at. And so that's a lesson I got from 2020, 2021. I'm also a college professor, 15 years now. I teach multiple things, leadership 1, leadership 2, organizational ethics. But my most important class is understanding and managing diversity in the workplace. I've been teaching that one for exactly 15 years. So you can imagine a change in society from where I used to whisper the word gay in class to being able to talk about sexual orientation and sexual identity on the level that we do now. And so society is changing, and I'm glad to be a part of educating our young people on the changes of society. And then finally, I am a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant. I have been for the last 15 years. I'm very grateful that I'm a content expert when it comes to DE&I work, and even more grateful that I have 2 global brands as my clients. So as I'm shifting from being an ambassador for Lululemon, and I'm grateful for Lululemon because they took this old Black dude and say, hey, we want you to be one of our ambassadors. That's inclusiveness, right? Really cool. But I have now trained in diversity work 3,500 Lululemon employees. And I recently picked up Lacoste USA as my client. So here I am, this little Tommy is my middle name, Thomas, little Tommy from Homewood with 2 global brands as clients. And I'm just grateful for that. And I've been able to globally do my work now, not just with those 2 global brands, but I've been able to go to work with colleges throughout America and other businesses throughout America. So I'm really grateful to be in that space. So although I like to be interesting and not, I like to be interested and not interesting, you asked me. So there you go.
That's what we wanted. And there are a couple of things that I think about when we talk about your career. I recently was talking to a mentor, a teacher of mine, and she discussed like this idea of portfolio careers and how you put together so many different aspects of who you are and what you've done, that you create a portfolio of careers. And that's what I see you as having done. And even myself, and even you, Wes, like as individuals who have interests in varied places and have experiences in various places, they translate and they fuel each other and they spur each other. And it's really awesome that we don't have to be pigeonholed into one spot. And I think that's important. Like, I don't have to be pigeonholed to, you're a Black woman who works. I mean, I started off as a teacher, you know, and you don't have to be pigeonholed into like, oh, Wes, you do fitness and you do fitness in a wheelchair and that's all you do. And, you know.
But you know, April, I like what you said with that, because, and thank you, Richard, because as I'm listening to you speak, I'm like, man, I never thought about just retiring from fitness. You know, but I think about the things that I'm doing and I think about the transition of that. But like what April said, I think my transition started because I was a Black disabled man in fitness. And even though, you know, the competitions and things were great, where I was getting pulled and gravitated to was only acknowledging me and the things that I could do, you know, not actually who I was as a person. It was just really like, I'm like, oh, I got this opportunity. I'm like, no way, right? Like, and just thinking about where I come from, you could always feel like when there was an agenda. And I think fitness for anybody that is Black becomes something that is highlighted a little bit over the top, because that's what is projected all we can do. So to be able to, you know, see yourself and then even speak. And like for me, I love the work that I do with my nonprofit, not the fitness part. You know, like I love like reshaping lives and, you know, helping them create their identity. It's not, I might use fitness as a piece of it, but it's, you know, you can work out your mind, right? Like, so, and I think a lot of people don't teach that. So I, again, like that, but then what April said, we do have to be able to, we can have different skills. We can be a jack of all trades and a master of one, you know, but we can, when we understand that we can do more as a culture, as a people, we start to be able to, you know, live more, right? And live better, because a lot of people, all they do is think of one lane, right? Like basically what we're talking about is like spread your lanes a little bit, you know, and have them open up wide. So no, thank you for just sharing that. Even though you might have not thought it was as interesting, I was really, really taken back from just the things you're saying, and as well as with the partnerships and connections you have. That's amazing. Just the work you're doing and the avenues that a lot of young Black men, as we talked about probably in our first conversation, just don't really know about, you know, so yeah, thank you.
You know, what's interesting, Richard, is that one of my nicknames is for you. I have a few friends, like 3 or 4 friends, and they're hustlers. And I call Richard a hustler because like you always, well, from my vantage point, my perspective, you take the risk and you put yourself out there. And I know you encourage others to do that, where as you reflect back on your life and your experiences, where does that come from?
Yeah. Wow. So first off, thanks, Wes. And I was thinking what Wes was saying, and you, April. So we have primary and secondary dimensions of diversity. The primary are the things we're born with and we can't change. The secondary is that I'm a father, a brother, a fitness professional, a DEI consultant, and that long list. Most of the time, people see BIPOC people only as that primary dimension and not all of the things that we actually are with our secondary dimensions. And so I just wanted to call that in. And so, so that hustle and that grind and that wanting more for others came about as a young person growing up extremely poor, but didn't know that I was extremely poor because everyone in the neighborhood was exactly the same. So there's no classism, right? If you're all on the same level, you don't identify that someone has more than another person. And just needing to provide for my family. And so I was a tall kid. So at the age of 14, I got my first job in a restaurant as a busboy because they thought I was 16. And so I would work until 2 a.m, go to school the next day, as well as deliver papers. I had the largest paper route in our community. And then that taught me customer service, and that taught me to be on time and all those fun things. As you are aware, April, that one of my taglines is that you matter. And the you matter actually came from this fact that I can't ever recall being told that I mattered. And so I decided to drive that for everyone else, right? And so that drive is making sure, I put the oxygen mask on myself first, as they say on the airplane, but then we'll make sure everyone else has their oxygen mask on as well.
I like that. And I submit to everyone watching and even ourselves, Richard, when you talked about people, there's a primary and a secondary. I think we could benefit our own selves from like writing those lists down, and that, get your journal out. I actually have my journal here with me today. It's thick and it's pretty full because I'm teaching a class on restoration. See, Wes has his right on the side. When you guys came in, he was talking about how he reconfigured his space. And so now his bookshelf is right there.
I actually bought 2, April. So the bookshelf I have in my room now actually has all the books that I would consider geared to Black empowerment or uplifting, things like that, but Black authors. So as I look across from my bed every day, I see that first. Like these are growth, these are advancement, these are listening and hearing other perspectives, but I want to always have those solid ones that's like, I'm like, that's it, that's that one. So I've really, and all my books were always hidden. I always had to grab them and try to find them, so to have them in my space and to have my journal around me all the time gives me the ability to do it more.
Oh, I love you sharing that. And that kind of goes to what you're saying, Richard. Like we always kind of tease Richard. I'm always like, hashtag you matter. But that's all. These are the kind of things that can help you really understand that you do matter. Like writing down your words, your voice, looking at reflections of yourself, be it in literature or in podcasts or whatever. But I really liked what you shared, Richard. Like people see us in certain dimensions, and we begin to probably see ourselves in that way too. And then we live in that and we walk in that.
Right. But we're so much more. We're so much more. And I don't know if I told you this, April, but this year, recently, as of May, some amazing things is happening in my life that I can't share here. But I sat with myself in tears one day, and I realized that we don't think big enough. And things are happening for me that I never could imagine. And so that journaling, and I'm really now mad at both of you because my journal's not next to me right now. But being able to sit with yourself and think bigger than what you ever imagined, because actually there are bigger things that we could ever imagine. And we have to manifest that. It's not often that someone's knocking on our door offering it up to us, right?
Yeah, and I think I shared that with Wes when we had our meeting about the future of safe spaces. I shared, it's like Richard said, think bigger, because you told me, you're like, April, you need to think bigger.
Yeah.
That's so helpful.
No, I'm with that, Richard. I feel like now I'm at the point of my life where there are things that's happening that I can't talk about. There are.
I need to rub on both of them. Although I know some things. I know some of them. I'm gonna drink.
There are rooms that I am entering that I would have never thought I was going to enter. There are people listening and learning from my perspective that I would never imagine. So it has put me in a place where I've started to think a lot bigger of what I could do and the impact I can create outside of just the skills and talents that I have. And then I speak a lot, and a lot of my engagements have been 2-3 hours away from my city. And what it has done is allow me to even think bigger within my area, like think bigger within my reach, even locally, because I've started to see things that I just wouldn't have thought that was in our, the crazy thing for Black people is that we're so small-minded because we were never taught to think bigger, right? Like, it's just kind of like we are, at least for me, I didn't know how big Africa was. I always just thought like it was always kind of pieced out for me, so you never thought of the world outside of, America. And I think that when you think bigger, you're thinking worldwide, you're thinking the impact you can do in other countries. You're also realizing that there are so many other countries, right? like some people only think of this one country and that one impact. And so, but yeah, man, I like that because it makes sense for us to think bigger. But I think for us, we get put in a place or we get an opportunity that gives us the ability to now know our worth even more because somebody's seen it in us. I don't know if you've had that experience, Richard, yet, but I've had an experience where I've pitched something and they're like, oh, but this is how we see you. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, that's the value I bring to the, and it kind of makes me get back and again, think bigger. So if anything, we want to reflect on, our past and things to allow us to think bigger. How about
And what's interesting, Richard, I'm going to tell a little bit of our business. Being candid, like you've been very successful navigating in white spaces. So much so that this is my opinion. I feel like those white spaces othered you. They didn't see you as a Black man. They see you as like, oh, Richard. And I have seen a transformation even in the last 4 years, the last 2 years, especially with all that's gone on, that we really stepped into our own voices. And it's funny to me, like people didn't see that in you because you're an alpha. Like you pledged way back when, first Black fraternity. So like you haven't denied who you are. Maybe in a certain sense, we all have let go of our identity in order to be successful. But I think it's beautiful that like you've really been able to put in the work and stand in who you are as a Black man, especially recently, and the opportunities that's now affording you even beyond what happened in the past. How do you feel?
I really like that. It's a challenge to get white spaces to understand that I'm not an exception. I'm still one of those Black people.
Yes.
Don't separate me from my people, right? And so don't other them and make me exceptional. Wes, I agree with you with people saying, well, this is my idea for you. But when I'm done with them, Wes, they create space for me every time. Mm-hmm. Because I'm going to, no, you don't understand my value. I understand what you think, but no, here's my real value. And so for the last 10 to 15 years, everything that I've done, if I was working for someone else, that position was actually created for me. When I may have gone in some stupid job description and they realized later, no, this guy's more than that job description. And so we sometimes have to stand strong and continue to point out our values until they finally realize, yeah, this is the person. Yeah, this is right. I wasn't thinking. I wanted to quickly say, Brene Brown, going back to thinking big for a moment. Brene Brown said, we will need to choose courage over comfort. And that's mediocrity. Kills us, right? And so we really have to be courageous and have those courageous conversations that some people just may not want to hear. And so I really like that quote from her, because she was saying that specifically for white people. But I've adopted it because I too have to have a voice. And so I have to choose courage, right, to be in these spaces.
That's a good segue into what we have done here, I feel, with Sunday Safe Spaces. When we look back on 12 episodes, like, I don't know, 15 plus hours of dialogue, is we got uncomfortable, I think. And we chose courageous conversations to have with so many guests, over 20 something guests. And I wanted to hear from you two, when you reflect on it, what conversations have stood out to you that we've had in the past 12 months? I was able to dive in because I've been listening to quite a few of the podcasts over, but I'm just curious to know, have any stood out to you guys?
So I have to go back and look at all the recordings. That's what I have to do. But I really like the first one you had with Richard Butler and the one we're having right now.
But that was like you, Erica, Yarden.
Yes. So Black fitness professionals in the city of Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it's a desert. I mean, that was the handful that actually exists in Pittsburgh.
Well, Erica's in Minneapolis.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Doing the same work through yoga and doing the same DEI work, right? Yeah. Using trauma-informed yoga. Yep.
Yeah. What about for you, Wes?
Oh, so many. So many. Let's see.
We covered so many topics. I know, Richard, you had listened to a couple also, because Josiah, my brother's keeper, was on.
Oh, right.
Okay. Let me start off. So, whew. All right, give my girl Lolo a shout out, because the one we had with Lolo was pretty legit.
That was good, huh?
Just kind of adding value, talking about the value and our worth on that one, honestly. So that one was really, really good. Me and April just had a conversation with, and I know April had to ask for the pronunciation of the name, so I'm not going to get it wrong. But
Aida and Trish.
Yes. Oh man, Richard, if you didn't listen to that one was. I learned
I saw that one was pretty impactful just based on your social media, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I had never, just kind of like how you were just talking about, you're saying, and just never having that kind of spoke to you in a sense. Like, I had never seen or heard women of color, or anybody of color, speak with such ownership of themselves.
Mm-hmm. I have chills just you saying that.
But then just the introduction, Richard, before they even started talking, this is who I am, and this is all I am. And it was just like, I've listened to that maybe I can't even count how many times, just because even though I've tried, I would say I've attempted. Like I felt proud of some of my approaches, but when I listen to it, I'm like, I'm still working on that, because that was just something that was powerful. And again, it was just women. That just, yeah, it was good. But April, we had a talk with our Black History conversation. It was Sean. Was it with Sean?
Oh, Sean Moore from Atlanta, from
Yeah,
Morehouse.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember. Yeah, that one was good. I don't want to say it was Black History, but it was something around that time. It was good. Who did we have on there with Sean?
I feel like it was just the three of us. And Sean Moore works at Morehouse. It's like he's an administrator at Morehouse, but he does meditation and sound bowls. And Sean is like a brother, like just like big dreads, and just like he sits like this. He's just pontificating, and that was Sean. If you're listening, call us. We want you back. Parenting through the lens of a Black man.
Yeah.
Parenting through the lens of a Black man.
That one was good. My boy Joseph. What is it, Joseph Smith?
Yes.
We had Joseph on. We were talking because he's from Pittsburgh, right?
He's from Pittsburgh. He's on the autism spectrum.
Yeah, with Chaz. So wasn't it with Joseph and Chaz? Wasn't that together? Was that not together?
Chaz was on that one too. You know Chaz, Richard, Chaz McCallum at Pitt.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know Chaz.
Yeah, Chaz came with some fire. Oh, what's up, Chaz? Like, I love the way he did. I loved it. I did. It was so good. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, of course, we're looking at ways that we can push these conversations on other different streams so people can really be able to tap in and listen to them just anywhere you go. So I'm excited about that. But because these are so good, like April, we only named a few, but we're coming in 12 months. It's like, if you haven't listened to, or how about the one where we did with the Black women, right? Like in leadership.
With Melissa and Anna. Yeah, I listened to that the other day too, and authenticity in being your authentic self, and loving yourself, which is kind of what we're even talking about now. Like, oh my God, all these wonderful conversations, and I feel as though we just tapped into, it's like a drop in the pond, and I think that's important. And I want to ask, like, I'm gonna ask you, Richard, where you can see Sunday Safe Spaces moving forward too. And with that, I want to add, there are so many others that are in our world. And you said it, Richard, you're like, I'm not the only person. Like, we have people in our families, in our communities, in the world who we know, who we've been inspired by, who we see doing the work. And we want to blast that in the media as opposed to other figures who are in the media who don't really represent us. And that's the intention of what we're trying to do. It's like the three of us here are moving forward and working out our own stuff. And we're sharing the practices that help us stay grounded and centered to the best that we can. And there's so many others too. And we recognize there are those who need our support. Yeah. So Richard, where you like helped start this? What is your vision?
My job was done once I connected all of you. What do you mean?
Here's your part, right? Like, y'all go do the work now.
But you know what? What's really needed? I do an entire workshop on creating psychological safety for people of color. And is your employees actually showing up their true authentic selves, or are they showing up the way that you need them to show up? And so this space I call it, brave, safe space. This is a space for BIPOC people, people of disabilities, people, different sexual orientation or identity, to be able to have that brave, safe space to psychologically show up safe and know that they're not going to be talked over, talked about, judged, stereotyped. And I say continue, sometimes when we're successful, we should change while we're successful. Great example, Blockbuster, no longer here. Blueberry, that cell phone from Canada, no longer here. Radio Shack, Sears, they were in the peak of their success, but did not plan for the future. So I like you while you're being successful to think about, how can I take what we already have, maybe not drastically change it, but make it even shinier? What topics have been missing when you go through those 12 months? Whose voice should be in this brave, safe space? Start asking those questions. And I believe that you're going to have a yet another winning program and initiative.
Those are good questions. I'm glad that you're bringing those up, and you bring those up to corporations too. And I think that speaks to your own personal beliefs and just the visual that I've seen of you. Like you keep pushing, you keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Not settling.
Yeah. What's next? What's next in the push? Like you said, what voices? I was just speaking. Love everything you just said, Richard. Just all the way around. Even like what your initiative or intent to make sure that you grab other people like yourself, and make sure that they're in the spaces. I always tell people, when you start looking around and you see that you're the only one and you're the one, like I always say, like everyone wants information from me, but there's a gentleman right next to me with the same story, and that is like always going to be like the goal and intent, but to make sure that we're pushing in growth, we reach a level. And then I think the next level is to make sure that you reach back. Because I think when you first started talking, the only thing came to my mind was I started giving before I considered receiving. Like my transition in life, I started my nonprofit before I even looked at like, how do I gain monetary value for what I'm doing. Like I was collecting disability. Like I was literally in like one of those debilitated mindsets due to my circumstance. And then once I overcame it, the first thing I thought was, oh man, I should start an organization. Like I didn't even know that I could get anything through that. You see what I mean? Like it was just like, oh, let me do this so that I can be able to serve others with this mindset, and then everything else came about. So just allowing, and that's always my daily reflection, but it was something that kind of was strong code when you started speaking in your introduction. Was like, man, like I think the wins that we make now is because of because the people we continue feeding, with the seeds that we learn and the knowledge. And that's all we're doing, is just sharing that knowledge of growth. And that grind, that authentic grind, and letting people see it and making sure that they are in the spaces. And I think that's how employers take action, where you're not only just people of color, right? Like, but where are the disabled bodies that are in the room? I was just telling someone that the other day, I said, you can always invite us to the dance, but are you asking us to dance? And asking us to dance is the action, right? And I was like, I broke it down. I probably was the only Black man in the room speaking. And I said, when you dance with someone, you gain a connection. I'm like, every time you watch it on TV, whatever, it's a connection. And if it's a good connection, it starts a conversation. So I kind of broke it into that. It's like, bringing someone in the room, they can hug the wall. Do you ever talk to the wall huggers? You know what I mean? But if you start dancing with someone, you interact with them, you're laughing, you're giggling, you're seeing them as a person because you broke the barrier. So we need to learn how to break the barrier, start asking people to dance, and then we create that space for the room. Don't just bring me in to get the knowledge, but you have to take the action by implementing more bodies in that room. The discomfort is when everyone knows my name, because I'm the only one in the whole organization, right? Like but even though I see the impact, as Richard said, now it's time to bring more bodies. So now you're like, which one of y'all is Mike? You know what I mean? Like, because when you go somewhere else, you're like, all right, Steve upstairs or Steve downstairs or Steve on the bottom floor. It's like all these different Steves. And so it's like, oh man, well, when are you going to have a lot of different Mikes or Randys or whatever in this facility as well, so that we can create that culture? So,
yeah, it speaks to inclusion. Yes. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, what I wanted to just add one more thing to that dance, Wes. And so I don't want to be invited to the dance. I want to be in the room helping write the invitations.
Right. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that.
Because you bring your friends.
You got it.
To meet everyone else's friends.
Right. Not checking a box to see who's at the party. Look, we have this inclusive party. Well, it's inclusive when I sat down with you. I'm sitting at the table, but it's a table that I built, not a table that you built. And then we write those invitations. Then we ask who's not in the room, who has not been invited. But we go even further with that. We can't even begin to write these invitations until we check and make sure everyone is in the room to help write those invitations.
That speaks to power, right?
Yep.
If you're coming to my house, I can make the rules. If we're coming to a community space where we all built it.
Right. I'm supposed to be grateful because you invited me, but I'm the only one.
Yeah.
And how often has that happened?
All the time.
That's a lifetime.
It's still gonna make somebody uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. You just sit there and you nod.
If you can get that far. If you can get that far, it's like I might not want to move my head a certain way in this space.
That's back to that psychological safety, right? Do I feel safe to move my head side to side? Do I feel safe to speak up? Do I feel safe to disagree with Wes and April and Amy? Am I going to be retaliated against because I say, well, that's a dumb idea. Here's the real solution, and you need to be able to have that ability to be able to be empowered to do exactly that.
Yep. Agreed.
And that is what we want to do, empower. I think we shift culture when we step into it and we try to take ownership of our power.
Yeah.
And I very intentionally use the word try because it's an effort that is going to be collective. It's going to take everyone, but it doesn't mean that we don't have the capability of doing so and of taking care of ourselves in the meantime. Those are conversations that we've had, like even when you were on for our first talk, Richard, when we talked about Black bodies in health and fitness, we talked about how we're seen, we're athletic, we can move, we're strong, and that's supposed to be representative of what health is, right? However, statistically, we see the high rate of illness in the communities of Black and brown individuals. And so why is that not translating? Why is it not translating that we are healthy and we're well and we're fit, but yet we're not? And part of it is, I think, like you talk about that psychological safety, Richard. I think even in our society, do we feel safe? Can we work to make means to take care of ourselves without working 2, 3, 10 jobs? Why do we have stress? Why do we have so much high blood pressure? Why do we are dying from heart attacks so much more than others. And that's where we want to create space for us to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? The top 5 chronic diseases that kill Black and brown people are all preventable. And it's preventable. My other 2 sayings is that movement is my medicine and movement is my meditation. And if we could actually espouse that more than saying go work out, that what are the other mental benefits of this movement idea? And movement and meditation actually help prevent those 5 top chronic things, like the hypertension, like high cholesterol, obesity, musculoskeletal issues. All of those are preventable, and all the way down to skin cancer.
Yeah.
Well, like you just said, Richard, everything is psychological, right? Like everything is. I talk about it all the time. It was what was instilled. So, generational trauma, generational perceptions, right? Like a lot of people are still thinking the same way their parents thought, and maybe the same way their parents thought. It's been very, very. It's been very healthy. Seems like something that is a bad term, right? Like everyone's like, now I'm always like, they're like, oh man, you gonna go eat something healthy? I'm like, you're damn right. Like, what do you mean? Like,
And it's good.
Like, oh man, you got a salad? Yes, I ain't had no greens today. Like, what are you, are you drinking water? Of course, I'm gonna hydrate myself. So it's just kind of like when you hear that in our communities, other communities, I think the reason why they gravitate to it is because it's norm, right? Like for us, the normal thing was we still are eating scraps in the barrel, right? Like we're only focused on working 9 to 5, and then that's our labor time, and then after that we're supposed to just relax. We don't understand giving ourselves time, giving ourselves love. Like we give it all, and all the energy that we believe we have to the systems that take control of us psychologically, because everybody knows how much stress a Black person has when you go into a space that you don't feel comfortable. Like you're using so much energy that you came in with, right? Like, and so by the time you're done, you're drained, and you could have gave it all just because, like for me, having a disability, I tell people all the time, like you never, like even just getting in and out the car is one thing. But then if I have to, the elevator broke or something's wrong or the obstacles or me having to go all the way around, whatever it is, that's extra energy that maybe I just didn't put into that day. And then on top of that being Black. So then going into a space and
people staring at you just because you're brown skin.
And so again, so going all the way back to, we don't understand, how to channel all of that and then to go into those spaces that help us grow. Gyms aren't really, we're making them more inclusive, right? But we all know that most gyms are in, suburban areas. You might get a few that are in your community, but not really, right? Like, and so, and even those might not give you the projected like motivation or push that you would go to a different one that has like all these amenities, right? Like rock climbing walls and stuff. Like it's not opening your mind up. And so I go back to like, I think physical movement has brought so much value to me mentally and physically. And I always tell people it's the mental aspect that gets me the most. Physical is just kind of what, it's just growth. It just looks good. But I go in there to meditate. I go in there to listen to my books. I go in there to give myself time, and I find myself replenished after all of that. And it's like we don't get that replenishment because we're focused on how to get out of the box that we're still stuck in.
Yeah,
that was systematically created years ago. As all these conversations we've had in these 12 months. Yeah, I'm starting to reflect now, April. But all these conversations have really been built on those that have found a way to decode or break the systems that they was kind of pushed into, and I think that that's the power of it, is because we've heard all these different pieces of people breaking the system. Getting into health and wellness is breaking a system. You know, understanding that you can advance more than being an athlete, breaking a system. You know, even like it's just, and then at each end of our episodes, we provided books and literature, you know, and we're again breaking a system. When I speak, I tell people I started reading at probably the age of 27, and they look at me, I'm like, well, when I grew up, they told us not to, you know, and like they don't understand the system of that. So I know, like, yeah, I took us to church for a second, but it's so, again, it's just so true. It's like everything is psychological, as Richard was saying. I just wanted to piggyback off of that because only way we can heal is once we heal our minds and our thoughts. Maybe our thoughts before our minds. How do we see ourselves and see our lives and see the healing process within our lives so that we can actually grow?
I like that.
I have two things on that, Wes. Thanks for taking us to church.
Sunday.
Earlier, but it's a Sunday.
Praise the Lord.
Put in the chat that we as a people need to go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And we need to open up our minds to those possibilities. And then when you talk about structures and systems that have kept us boxed in, I like to call them intentional structures and systems. They were not accidental.
Truth. And what you said, Wes, we have been talking to people who have decoded the system. That was good. And that's exactly who we've tapped into. People who have decoded the system. And I feel like that connects back to you, Richard, because I've shared with you my idea. When we talked to Trish and Aida from Calling In and Out, they've written, for those who haven't watched, you can go watch last month, but they've written a curriculum to support women of color in social justice organizations. This curriculum is free. It's on their website. They have retreats. And they have found that it translates to so many others as well. So I've even started using it with nonprofit that I do strategic consulting with. But one of the, we did it at our board meeting, Richard. We looked at our superpowers. And I told Richard at the board meeting, I said, you're the weaver. And when you talk about like Malcolm Gladwell, when we talk about books, he wrote Connectors. I see you as a connector. And it's kind of like, to me, that's the way that you've decoded the system.
Right.
Making connections and weaving.
Making connections. And you know, I believe that effective leadership is when we give all the power away, not keep it to ourselves. And so by me connecting people, I'm giving away my power. I don't need all that power. And so I try to connect people with that idea for their own growth mindset and empowerment, for sure. So when we get that knowledge, and you're doing it here with Safe Spaces, and I appreciate Open Up for hosting safe spaces, but what you're actually doing is you're giving away that power because you're having these courageous conversations. And so people can walk away with at least one golden nugget, one aha moment. You don't need to be drinking from the fire hydrant of diversity, equity, inclusion. You just need to sit through the straw and focus on at least one thing that you can do better in that space. And I also put in the chat, Nelson Mandela said, one of the most difficult things is not to change society, but to change ourselves. And so all of my diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations is actually about self-reflection of who you are in this space. I'm not calling them out. I'm calling them in. I actually let them sit with who they've been in this space versus me telling them. And by the time we're done in that hour or 2 hours, if they're not crying, they're thinking about crying.
You know, Richard, I love that because I think when you get into the conversations, when you know yourself, right? Like it goes again, when you know yourself, you don't really get judgmental, right? Like it's hard for you to be judgmental. You know the process of what got you there. It's authentic, it's organic, you love your flaws, whatever.
It's empathetic.
Bitter people, you know, hurt people, right? So I had that question asked to me recently after I got done with a talk. It was more or less like, how do I, take away my thoughts of, if they're negative thoughts of other individuals because I don't know them. And I said, well, how much do you know yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, how much have you took time to actually go and reflect on who you are? And I just said, because if you listen to my journey, I was very negative and didn't like so many people when I didn't like myself. Fast forward to now, I love myself and I can't tell you that I hate you. You see what I mean? And it just kind of went back from that. And it was like, and they were a lot older. So it was impactful for me to hear that question, but it was even good to have them just take a moment to self-reflect, because I think a lot of people just don't take that. So, yeah.
I like that you're calling people in. And I kind of want to share this statement, and I know we're going to close, and then we're going to share some things that, well, it's particularly you, Richard, that you've used to support yourself. But when you just said, Wes, like you've talked to people who were older, and when we talk about dancing with people, that's a thing that Richard and I have discussed, and you and I have discussed that. Like the three of us here are like in all different decades of our lives, and having conversations and not othering people because of their age, and recognizing that there's a girl who wrote she did a TikTok. My kids are like, you're so addicted to TikTok. It's so interesting. But she was like reflecting on her life. She's like, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she said, when you're 50 and you have joint pain, you're going to wish you were back to 20. I was like, girl, I do not have any joint pain, and being able, but having those conversations intergenerationally, that's the intersection, right? Like, so yeah, we're not just all like three Black people sitting here. We are three Black people of different generations, of different abilities, of different genders, of different geographies, and we bring, that's why we wanted to do this, right? Bring all of us to the table so we can hear like the diversity even in our own voices. And I think that lends itself to expanse and to growth.
I love that. April.
Yeah. I was just thinking when you said generationally, I was born when Jim Crow laws was still a law.
Mm.
So up until I was 7 years old. Yeah.
Such a foundational part of who you are.
Exactly. That
when we
really
talk about
is.
generational trauma, you were taught some things to survive.
Yes.
Yep.
Listen,
you didn't let it go.
I'm over here like, because I always go back to Richard. I always go back. I'm not saying you there yet, but I always go back to my 90-year-old grandma because that's my grandma is still alive, and I always have to go back and reflect to her lifestyle and the way she lives life. Why she's at home all the time and she doesn't get out. She was built on survival. She was built on staying, in the house and not out the house. And even though times have changed, her mind hasn't changed in things, so she's really living through me and some of the younger people to see what she's capable of, but maybe not be physically able to do it no more. So yeah, no, I had to throw that in because I think that because it's so much, like you said, like whatever you broke that code though. You see what I mean? Like some people haven't broke that code, so they're still stuck in certain ways. So yeah, I just had to throw that out because I'm always teaching her, and I know I am because of what was instilled with her for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I'm hoping I can be 90 one day. So Richard, what have you done to break the code? What are you reading currently? I know you're reading a lot.
Sure. So first off, when we discover self-compassion, we can finally begin to love the others that might not actually love us. Once we're solid with our own compassion. And so self-compassion, self-reflection, self-care, self-awareness, all those selves is where we need to begin just as individuals to be able to then break the code. Because if I'm still hating on myself, if I'm still hating on people that look like me because the white supremacist body says I should hate on people that look like me, then I'm not cracking any code. and I'm not able to walk in those white spaces at all. And so just having that platform of who we are. And so as for reading, presently I'm finishing up My Grandmother's Hands because of April recommended that book, and it's excellent. I've already created a workshop around it, just saying. I'm reading, I'm a multiple reader. I'm also reading Medical Apartheid. So the entire history of what has happened in society with Black people in the medical profession. Excellent book. It goes from the beginning to now.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So the natives were also victims, women. It's an amazing book. And then finally, I'm also reading and referencing The Sum of All of Us. And
yeah, somebody brought that up in one of our talks, right?
Right. So The Sum of All of Us also I've been able to turn into a workshop.
Nice.
And so, yeah. So just keeping my brain fresh. That's it.
Thank you.
I love that. I love that.
What are you reading, Wes?
I just finished the 5 a.m. Empowerment Club. It was, I'm a 5 a.m.er, so anything that's telling me and motivating me to still do what I do. But it was it was very powerful because it didn't just talk about waking up at 5 a.m. It really just talked about setting the tone for your life. So you wake up earlier, you elevate your life. And of course, I'm always just a firm believer of that. So that's kind of been it. But I've been tapping back into my podcasting. As I shared one with you, April. So I listened to the Model Health Fitness Show with Sean Stevenson. And it just gives a lot of insight. And he brings powerful speakers, a lot of Black speakers, a lot of speakers, period. But that's kind of been my recent listens. Yeah, but now that I have my books like set up now, I can really see myself going back into my physical books and grabbing some knowledge. So,
I like that. I like this lifelong learning that we're talking about too. I'm finishing, well, maybe I'm in the middle, Obama's biography, which I was a history major, so I love history, and I just love hearing about his the presidency. I've read I think I read both of his other books. I know I read one for sure. But so finishing that up, I'm finishing up another nutrition certification. So I've been busy reading that. And you know how you get so excited learning all this stuff. So I've been doing that. And Radiant Rest by Tracy Stanley, which there's this accessible yoga conference with Giovanni, I might say his name wrong. Heyman is his last name, Giovanna Heyman, who I actually got a chance to interview with Open Up. The yoga conference has been amazing. The women who have a podcast called Yoga is Dead, she just did a talk, Richard, on movement science is racist. I just listened to that yesterday, so that's making me think of your book. And I'll put it in our notes, you guys, when we share our YouTube notes. But the conference has just been wonderful because they intentionally brought persons that they had never brought to the table before, and just the varied experiences, the faces, the bodies. They talk about everything that we've talked about too. So maybe I'll look for some potential guests from that space. But that's been occupying my time. And Tracy Stanley, I'm actually going to do a class today on the power of rest and being in that liminal space and how it creates opportunity and expanse and time to reflect on our own self. So we really know what we're capable of. And Richard, thank you for just being present and being here with us, sharing what you feel is important and sharing how you have decoded the system to support yourself and navigate and thrive. I see you as a thriver, not someone who's just surviving.
Yeah, thank you so much. You two are doing great work. I'm honored and humbled to be in your company, and keep giving away your power.
Love that.
I love that. All right. So everyone, if you want to get in touch, Richard is at CoachRTB on Instagram. He has his website, which we shared. What is the name of your DE&I website?
It's not a website yet.
Okay.
But it's CoachRTB, Coaching and Leadership Group. So
Doing all the things, Mr.
all
Butler.
the things, all the things.
I'm going to see your name and Wes's names in lights soon.
On billboards. On
Oh,
billboards.
billboards.
There we go.
Well, listen, happy Sunday. I hope this football Sunday does everyone well.
I'm over here like we got 2 hours. Actually, we got 1 hour and 52 minutes right now. So I can't wait. Okay, we about to. All right.
Richard is a true. One thing about Pittsburgh, what I've learned, it doesn't matter size, shape, color, nothing. If you're from Pittsburgh, you're a Steelers fan. Am I wrong, Richard, in that?
There's no choice.
Even if you don't like football, you're a Steelers fan.
It's in your DNA. You come out of the womb going, here we go, Steelers.
Hey, good stuff. Yeah.
So
Well,
when you visit West, you have to bring your Chief gear and
Oh no, definitely. I'm most likely gonna try to just see when we play the Steelers and come out there, and it's gonna be so raw. So
yeah. And then when we all go home to my town, we'll go to SoFi Stadium. I'll show you what Inglewood used to be and what it is now.
I'm with that.
Laker and Rams. All right, you guys have a beautiful day.
Right.
Thank you for
Thank
feeling
you
my
again.
people.
Appreciate you both.
We'll see
Thank you, Amy.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the podcast. If you would like more information on the guests and the stories that you've heard today, and to hear stories from others, subscribe to the podcast. We also invite you to subscribe to Open Up Pittsburgh's newsletter, as well as our YouTube channel. We want you all to take care, and remember to make your own stories. This is April. Peace.